Hey, welcome to Cheaper TV. I'm Dino, your host, the show that helps you get the most for your money so that you get the most for your Jeep. On this week's episode, we're going to look at the unboxing and the installation of the SmittyBilt X20 10k competition winch. We'll also have a tip segment where we'll talk about ways to help look after your winch. And then in this week's subscriber tips, we have more than a couple subscriber tips after last week's episode on 5 useful tips for used JK, so stick around. Okay, just before we continue with the unboxing here, I just want to say thank you to our subscribers. We've reached 2,000 as of late, and we're very happy. Thank you all very much for your support. And in an effort to show our thanks, we are going to have a giveaway contest, and the instructions for that contest will be in a post that I'll be sending out this week. And the only way you can see the post is if you click on that subscribe button, because when I launch the post, only subscribers see the post. And the instructions on how you can qualify to win the giveaway will be in that post. So if you're a subscriber, you have nothing left to do except wait for the post. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please remember to subscribe now, and that way you'll receive the information and you're eligible for the contest. So now let's get started with our unboxing. Well, the winch finally arrived. It's time to see what's in the box. There's the instructions. That's the negative battery cable. That's a harness for the wires behind the control box. And these are little brackets to mount the control box over the motor if you weren't going to mount it over the drum. There's the hardware. And this is the hand control that can function remotely, or it can function being plugged in directly to the controller. This is the winch pull strap. And here is the synthetic winch rope with its protective sleeve that can be used against rocks or the vehicle. And this is the brains of the winch, the control box and all its wiring. This is known as a hawse Fairlead. It's to help the rope go in and out of the winch without getting frayed along the edge of the bumper. And finally, the winch motor. And that's our unboxing. There aren't too many parts. We'll just spread them out and have a good look here. Now we can begin our assembly and then the installation. The first step of the assembly is to mount the control box to the winch. I'm choosing to mount it centered on the drum, but you can also mount it to your left on top of the motor with those special brackets that are provided in the kit. Let me come get the camera and take you over to the unit so you can see it from my perspective. There's the bracket sitting on the track, and on the back there's that little clamp that you would tighten just using a 3mm Allen key. Let's take you around to look on the other side. Again, there's the front, and you can see how the bracket sits nicely on the track. And then that clamp on the back, you have to be careful to make sure you could fit it into the groove underneath the track. So all you have to do is take a couple minutes to tighten these down, and you're ready to move on to the next stage. And that's to connect the wiring to the motor. You can simply just connect the wires by matching the letters or the colors. It's pretty hard to go wrong. And then just tighten down the 1/2-inch nut. The rubber boot slides over the nut and offers protection from the elements. So we just finished this last one and we're all done with the wiring. And be rest assured I did use a ratchet on this and tighten down those 1/2" nuts. In essence, we have finished assembling the winch. We'll just take our last few fasteners here and take it to the bumper for the installation. There's not too many pieces left. I'll explain what these square bolts are for during the installation. There's that beautiful bumper, and now what we have to do is make sure we install the winch plate brackets that came with the bumper. This bracket is for the passenger side, and this bracket goes on the driver's side. The hardware for these brackets came with the bumper. They attach the winch plate to the frame. This is on the passenger side. And here on the driver's side, the winch plate bracket is attached to the winch plate and then to the frame on the driver's side. We'll just leave the winch sitting on top of the bumper right now because we're now going to attach the Fairlead. In our configuration, we're going to put a flip-up license plate holder to mount our license plate. As you install the bolt through the hole, make sure that you first slip on the washer, then the lock washer, and then the nut. Tighten everything with an 18mm socket for the bolt and a 19mm socket for the nut. You won't see it here because my battery wore out. Now here's where those 4 square nuts come in handy. They slide into special slots at the base of the winch, and then when you settled the winch into the base plate, the bolts would come up through the plate and secure the winch down. It's a little snug, but you'll need to hold those wires down and slip the winch down into the bumper. With the winch centered in place, from underneath I installed the bolts into those square nuts. There's a good shot of one. There's another. From underneath the winch plate, you could see the heads of the 4 bolts that go through the plate and secure the winch. And now all we have to do is run the positive and the negative cable to the battery. Essentially, you want to move the negative cable to the negative pole of the battery, and then take the positive cable and run it to the positive pole on the battery. Whichever route you choose to run your cables, make sure they're not touching any moving or hot parts. I determined to pop off the engine air filter box. It was only held in by 2 rubber grommets on the bottom, and that allowed me to run cables underneath the air box. Noticed one of the rubber grommets in the bottom, so I made sure to reinstall it on the air box before I put it back. What you see here is the black or the negative cable running underneath this bracket here, and then around this bracket, and swinging over to the negative battery terminal. The positive cable comes up a similar route and is secured with some zip ties to be attached to the positive battery terminal. The airbox is reinstalled, and then the cables are securely attached to the auxiliary bolts on the battery terminals. Now it's time to attach your winch cable. The one end of your winch cable will have an aluminum bracket with a hole in it. Feed that into the Fairlead to attach to a bolt on the left side of the drum. You may need to rotate the clutch lever to the free spool position in order to rotate the drum to get access to the bolt. Loosen the bolt with a 5mm Allen key and then remove the bolt. Feed the bolt through the hole at the end of the synthetic cable and reattach it to the inside of the drum in the winch. Loosely tighten it for now. With the clutch in the free spool position, you should be able to rotate the drum so that the cable is going underneath and back over the top. Now use the 5mm key to firmly tighten the bolt into the drum. Now before we can activate the winch to spool in the cable, we'll have to use the remote control. Now the remote control can be used in wireless mode, or it can be hardwired and plugged in. SmittyBilt recommends that for the first few times that you use the winch, to use it manually plugged in. The end of the cable has a notch on the top to help you recognize which way to plug it in. SmittyBilt recommends spooling the cable on in an even fashion from one side to the other, with there being about 1,000 pound pressure on the line. One way in which you could do that would be to have the Jeep on an incline with your winch cable secured to a tree. That would afford you the pressure on the line that you need. If you don't have that ideal situation, perhaps somebody could be in the Jeep with some light pressure on the brake while you have your line secured to a tree or a pole. And once you've finished this task, it is complete. You have now installed the winch on your Jeep. Okay, now let's go get the camera because we have a few finishing touches to take care of in the driveway. Let's go. Now that I don't need access to the underside of the bumper anymore, I can now reinstall my skid plate. I had to make a couple modifications to the skid plate in order for it to fit, due to the fact that the new steel bumper had a couple areas that were blocking its installation. The required hack was that I had to cut a 1-inch notch with an angle grinder 13 inches in from each side due to an obstruction caused by the new steel bumper. But once I made that modification, the installation went quite smoothly. Another advantage of attaching the skid plate is that it gives me access to the clips on the skid plate on which to attach the plastic splash guard. Two 7mm bolts are used to attach the plastic splash guard to those clips. However, the top of the splash guard had to be trimmed creatively in order to be tucked up under the bumper. Essentially, the top flange and the top 2 inches of the splash guard had been trimmed away, with a couple tabs left to hook into the steel bumper.
Well, that's a lot of work and investment to have that winch, so let's look in our tip segment this week on how we can look after it.
Now for some cheaper Jeeper tips. One of the great things about this winch is that the hand control can work wirelessly, so a good tip might be to keep a few extra batteries on hand. But if you forget, it's not the end of the world because this unit still works plugged in direct as well. Another tip I've learned from reading the forums, where people say that this control box and switch are not exactly weatherproof, and so to prolong their function and their life, they apply dielectric grease to all the contacts. The best time to do this is prior to the assembly. The underside of the control box has 2 screws that you can remove, and you can apply the dielectric grease as needed. The next tip is from SmittyBilt, where they say to cycle the winch at least once a month to help keep the internals properly lubricated and to help prevent a buildup of moisture inside the winch.
Okay, that's easy enough. Now, let's hear from our subscribers.
And now for subscribers' tips. Our first 2 subscriber tips come from the video 5 useful upgrades for used JK. Hey Cheaper Jeeper TV, only two things I'll add. I bought the metal hood latches that have a lock on them. I didn't like the idea of being able to open the hood from outside the Jeep. Second, you need to be careful with LED lights. Most lights that are under $300 do not produce any heat and will not melt the snow in the winter. I have tried a few different pairs and none of them work. It's very bad driving in a snowstorm at night and you completely lose your ability to see. Heated LED headlights can run you around $800 or more. I ended up going with KC halogen headlights instead. Not as bright as LED, but brighter than factory. Signed, Trail Walker. Hey Trail Walker, thank you so much for the tips. In fact, I'll make sure to include links to products similar to the ones you mentioned in the tip in our description section of this video for our viewers. Thanks again. Hey Cheaper Jeeper TV, there's no need to spend that much money on a stereo system for the JK. You have more functionality out of an iPad or an iPad mini. I got a used iPad mini with cellular from Kijiji and it does all kinds of things you wouldn't thought possible. Not only is it good for GPS, maps, movies, music, clinometer, or scanner, I also use it as a video game system with a Bluetooth game controller. The iPad can connect to the Jeep's Uconnect system via Bluetooth, aux cable, or an aftermarket Bluetooth FM transmitter for audio if your Jeep doesn't already come with Bluetooth. There are also many options for mounting the iPad. Some mounts look almost OEM. In regards to a rear view camera, I have a brand motion spare tire mounted camera connected to a monitor. Signed, Roger. Hey Roger, thanks for that excellent tip. In fact, I'll also include links in our description section to some of the products that you mentioned, but those are ideas that I never even thought of. Thanks for sharing. Our next tip comes from the RuggedRidge HD full width bumper install video. Hey Cheaper Jeeper TV, if you're creative, you may be able to attach the plastic air dam under the steel bumper to help keep mud and road salt out of the lower portion of the rad. You just have to be creative, a little trimming here and there, then tuck it up nice and high. Signed, Jeff. Hey Jeff, thank you so much for that encouragement. In fact, you probably noticed in the video that I went ahead and did it. And that was thanks to you. I appreciate it.
So thank you all for your subscriber tips. It's very much appreciated and we know there's room for all kinds of views and learning. So thank you again. And if you want to send in some tips, please feel free to do so in the comments section below because we can all learn from everybody's experience. Okay, that's it for this week's episode of Cheaper Jeeper TV. We hope that you found it interesting and remember to subscribe at that little box down here below so that you'll be eligible for our free giveaway in honor of having 2,000 subscribers. So thank you all for your support and we'll be giving out the instructions for the giveaway in the post. So if you want to see them, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you receive the post. Glad that you were with us. Until the next time, I'm Dino for Cheaper Jeeper TV. Be well, stay safe, take care.